I will add that sometimes when we talk to teachers about starting active learning, a thing for them to keep in their head is when you do a lecture, often you do most of the work and the student does very little. The student takes it in. When you try to redesign for an active learning, you try to get the work about equal so that you and the students are both putting a fairly equal amount of work. I mean, whether it actually works out that way, I don't know, but that is the ideal. Thinking in terms of sharing learning that way.
I also make sure the students see that there's a clear structure. I try to make it as transparent as possible that this has all been orchestrated. So they may not see the work, but they see the evidence that this work has gone on.
My students don't care because the first thing is they don't know why they need to do physics. The second thing is even after the semester they say we still don't know why we took this class, and so they don't want to be there, and it looks like so it's a hurdle they want to get over, and so it makes it. So if I do all these things, they just don't care. Let's get this over with, and at least this way they are not too mad, or they actually after 2 years I get cards and even Starbucks cards. I've gotten 2 Starbucks cards by now. And they say that, oh, that really helped me. I didn't realize it then, but now since I'm in pharmacy school or medical school and things like that, I see what it was, and so now I'm happy that I was part of that. And things like that. That was good.
So,
I have one caveat on evaluations. The studies of educational psychology and learning, Robert Bjork's been one of the leaders in these studies that have shown things are most effective for learning probably because they make you work harder when you're doing them, yet rated the lowest by the participants, even when they're shown that it was more effective. So I've come to take evaluations with a big grain of salt from that, because to me what matters is, are they learning, not are they happy about it.
He has, and we all have. But if that is taken into account during promotion and all those other kind of things, so it needs to be at a larger level.
Right, because there is a certain amount of risk in innovating, and what you want to be is in an environment, an administrative environment that's aware of that and is supportive of the innovation.
I have got one question with respect to the structure of the courses, because we talk about courses that are only big lectures, okay, in quotation, and courses who are lectures and recitations, like in your case. So the active learning in the recitation part, because they are small groups, is relatively easy to implement. So if you have both of them, large lectures and recitations, you apply the same principles of active learning in both of them, or you apply it differently in the large one and in the small ones. And the second question before we finish, we are interested in our department to have this learning, undergrad learning
assistants,
more or less in the same way that you're using it to be helpers in the large lectures. So what's the difference between the two systems? Only lectures and recitations?
those are 2 great questions. Can we start with the recitation one to give that one space and come right back to the learning assistants and undergrads? Okay.
So I go, or?
Do we mean by recitation a lecture?
No,
What do we?
well, in a traditional lecture where the professor will give it the course, and then the breakdown groups were called recitation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Or labs.
Or labs.
So my recitation, so our labs have a recitation section and a lab section. So the recitation happens in the first hour and the lab in the next 2 hours. And my recitations are also active, and they are, so the students now all in groups go up to the boards and solve or make their problems and go from one board to the next and all those things. And I also have learning assistants in the recitations. So it's kind of the same structure as in the larger class, but in the larger class, they cannot go up to the walls to write. That does happen in the recitations.
No, my experience is similar. When we were setting up our large class sizes, the department insisted that we have a breakout session on Friday, or a recitation, if you will. And we were using that as an opportunity to train our teaching assistants, Because I think, unlike some of the other people, we get a lot of teaching assistants. I would get 3 to teach a 90-student lecture class. And so they take those 90 students and divide them into 6 sections on Friday. And just this last year, I've had the teaching assistants specifically use the active learning techniques and materials that I prepared, which had multiple benefits. The students, of course, were getting the benefits of the active learning. The teaching assistants, who were not all experts in literature, were able to manage a class that they were not necessarily well versed in, and were able to learn how to teach better and learning more about active learning. And it was a win for me too, because then it's easier for me to explain to them what they need to do. Now, getting these techniques when you're actually there with the 90 students, that is, a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Would you like to?
Or I can talk about the 2-1 model that, so chemistry is another department that has these huge lectures, and they do not have recitations. We all have always had recitations. So the chemists were asked to go with this 2-1 model where they have 2 days, Mondays and Wednesdays you do the large lecture, and on Fridays break down into smaller sections so that the students get more interaction time with the LAs, and the LAs can actually help more than in just a lecture class. So that model for them seems to be successful also.
And these LAs are undergrads.
The LAs are undergrads who have taken that course before, and they have been successful in the course, and then they come back to help the current students.
Do they have to grade?
They don't grade at all, no.
Okay.
Just to help them out, in class or outside.
And the biology classes, we have the lab is tied to, but a separate thing from the course, and it has its own set of things to do in it that is by nature supposed to be pretty active and has been long preceding doing anything active in the classrooms. So, and by the structure of what you can do in that kind of a setting, you just can't do that in a large class. So there are definitely some differences that had to be done by those of us, not everyone has, but some of us have implemented active learning into the quote-unquote lecture class. So yeah, we can't do the same things that they do in the lab in that case. But that's because it's more of a lab and not a recitation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same thing that we are doing, like you mentioned.
So learning assistants, we didn't.
Learning assistants for everyone.
So you're the only one of us, I guess, that's using them currently, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're
And
planning to use
so-
some of that.
So chemistry is using it, and math are also using it, although I haven't seen them yet.
Along those lines, let me ask a logistics question. When you teach a large class using an active style, how many people do you typically have assisting you in that class at that time? Is it just you, or are you able to marshal a team of graduate students or learning assistants, and do you need them?
I have the essay leader usually pitches in to do things, or they don't get to be my essay leader. SI, supplemental instruction. That's it.
I'm sorry, who is?
Supplemental instruction,
Ah.
which normally they're supposed to just sit there and listen. Well, what good does that do when it's not an actual lecture class?
Right.
So they get involved, but it's 2 of us against 200 plus of them.
That's where the LAs help, because I had that when I first came here, and then I got this LA program going and with chemistry. And now I have 6 LAs, 1 supplemental instructor, and 1 me, so 8 for 240 students, which is like a typically good ratio, 1 helper to 25 to 30 students.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And I mentioned getting 3 graduate teaching assistants. I think some people have gotten 4, but I've always received 3 to assist me. And if I were then to set up the 90-student class, it depends a lot on what room I'm assigned to teach in. The last room I taught in was tiered, but it was tiered in rows instead of spread out. So that kind of setup I could at least divide into like 10 groups, and then assign them their prompts through Canvas, have them work together, and with 3 teaching assistants helping me, we could patrol the rows like guards in prison, I guess, and making sure everyone was on task, and then calling the students to respond. So yeah, I definitely recommend them, and I think everybody should have them and use them.
Were you able to call all the groups to stand up?
Sometimes I'm not, and I will then say, well, we will start with your group when we return to class. The students don't seem to mind if they don't get a chance to present. And the important thing, I mean, the presentations, I'm not saying the presentation's not important, because then they're always modeling for each other the fact that they can do this, and that's always positive. But even if they don't get the time to present, they did have that time to collaborate and to discuss the prompts. So it's still a win, it's just a smaller win.
I have a 1-minute video that I sent you.
You sent it to me.
Yes.
Okay. Guys, we're gonna have to work together here. I need you to keep asking them for questions while I try to find this video.
What about,
Yeah, but
I didn't read the name. What about student teaching? You do any of that, where you assign different topics to, it seems like this could be a good way to engage students. So maybe a group gets a topic and become experts on that, and then reteach it.
Oh, I see. Have y'all done that?
I have a weird model where I ask the students to create their own problems, and first I made my students create their own exam problems. So they created problems, I put the same problems on the exams, and they scored a 72% average on the problems that they themselves created. So, which was much higher than the 40% they scored when I created those problems. So I said, this is successful, so I used that model, and so now all my students create their own problems. And so one student group will create a problem, and they will solve the problem, make sure everything's good, then they will put it up on the board. And so there are 6 or 8 groups in the recitations. So they all pick a topic, and then they create their own problems based on that topic, and then they move around and solve other students' topics. And that has, I show them the improvement that causes. And that they still don't like it, because we are creating problems. You're not teaching us now, we are creating problems. But it does help them in the end, is the main takeaway.
So your grade distribution has improved since you implemented?
It has, but so they don't see the improvement. They see that earlier it was 40, now it is 55, which I call improvement, but they don't see it as that, because they want 90s and they are getting 55. So I will say, yes, the grade distribution has improved, but not from the student's perspective.
Could you tell me a little bit more about your learning assistants, and how did you recruit them, and just a little bit about that?
So the first time we did it, we just handpicked them. So we know, so from my current class, I will say, this student looks good, this person's good, they are working well in groups, and they are discussing, they are explaining things to others, and everyone seems to like them. Would you like to be a learning assistant next semester for the same class? And if so, then here's an application form, apply, and then they come in and I interview them, and then they accept, and then they are learning assistants for the next semester.
Are they paid? Or
Yes, so that's the next. So how do we do this? So a lot of universities have different models. Some of them give it for credit, it's a course or things like that. We pay them. And so currently our money is coming from the COSAM dean, and we are trying to get an external grant for that. So as the program increases, we'll have a better chance of getting external funding. And so the nice thing is they are not physics majors, so they are again engineering students or pharmacy, pre-pharmacy or biology students. And so those are the students in the class, and the LAs are also from their same majors. And so I'm a biologist and I have to take physics, I don't know why, and I'm scared, I don't know what to do. And oh look, this biologist went through the same thing. He or she was also scared, but came along and was successful. So now I have a good chance of doing it, and so they get inspired and they do more. So it's been great from all perspectives.
I have a cautionary learning assistant tale. Back before Amaya was doing this, actually before you were even here, I tried this out in biology classes, but I had no funds, and no real access to get funds for it. So it was totally voluntary for the students to do it, but I tried to treat it as an honor, and I met with them and gave them, I had pizza parties occasionally, things like that and so on. But I found that if they're not getting paid and it's not an actual class, as their work starts to pile up over the semester, their commitment to actually doing it starts to fade. So that doesn't always work well. But I was inspired to do it because I have peers that I've talked to in biology and a lot of other institutions where the institution recognizes this is actually pretty darn cheap. And one student paid minimum wage per 30 in these large classes, that's a pittance of their tuition dollars. So if we could get the university as a whole to recognize the value of this for our large classes, then we could actually implement this on a wider scale.
And we have the SI model now, and in our classes, the SI actually function as an LA. And so it stands to reason that we can somehow combine the two courses. Now it's no longer the SI just comes to class and just sits because there's no sitting in class.